I recently read somewhere the self is not something ready made, but something in continuous formation. And I think this is such a powerful idea, powerful way of looking at ourselves. You might have noticed that we don't always behave in according to what we want. We know we should exercise, but we don't. We know we should work on our careers, but we procrastinate. We want to be more confident, but we avoid situations that are uncomfortable. And sometimes the problem isn't that we don't know what we should do. The problem is the way we see ourselves. Because we tend to behave according to who we believe we are. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about self identity, self concept, and a few psychological ideas and tools that can help us understand how we see ourselves and how we can consciously change that. The age old question of who am I? Now you might ask, how is this relevant to me? What am I actually going to get out of this video? How is this applicable to my everyday life? And the answer is a lot of decisions we make in our lives, the goals we pursue, and even the way we interpret what happens to us, is influenced by the way we see ourselves. We have internalized belief and ideas about who we are, and these beliefs can influence the decision we make in our personal as well as our professional life. So let's get started. Number one, self concept. Who do I believe I am? Self concept is essentially the overall picture of ourselves that we carry in our minds. We give ourselves labels. We create a narrative about ourselves. And over time, that narrative can start feeling like the truth. It can be positive or it can be negative. For example, I am not confident. I am bad with money. I am not athletic. I'm someone who gives up. But it can also be positive. I am ambitious. I am smart. I eventually figure things out, no matter how messy life gets. And these statements may seem like harmless descriptions. But the interesting thing is that once you have a particular idea of who you are, you tend to behave in ways that are consistent with that idea. If you think, I'm not just good with money, you might never learn about investing or about personal finance. If you think, I'm not a confident person, you might actively avoid networking, public speaking, or meeting new people. So self concept becomes the foundation. Number two, self schema. What does my brain expect from someone like me? This is where it gets really interesting. A self schema is essentially a mental framework that we have about ourselves. It influences the way we notice, interpret, and remember information about ourselves. So, if someone sees themselves as not confident, they may disproportionately, notice the awkward interactions they have. Imagine you're getting out of your comfort zone, you're mingling, you're networking, you're actually doing pretty well. You have 10 great interactions, but then you have that one awkward conversation. You say something you wish you hadn't said, or someone didn't give you the response that you were expecting. And suddenly you go home thinking, see, I'm terrible at socializing. The 9 or 10 successful interactions disappear from your attention. That one awkward interaction becomes the evidence. Or maybe you think of yourself as someone who's unlucky. You could have 10 things going right in your life. You're healthy, you have a career, you have amazing friends, you live in a city that you really like, you have opportunities. But perhaps one area of your life is not working. Maybe you don't have a healthy relationship you want. And suddenly your brain keeps returning to that one thing. I'm just unlucky. You might have 10 things going right in your life, but your attention keeps returning back to the one thing that's missing. This is why the story we tell ourselves about ourselves really matter, because we don't always experience reality objectively. We often notice and remember things that fit well the story that we already have in our mind about ourselves. Number three, self efficacy. Do I believe I can actually do this? This is different from self esteem. You can believe I'm a valuable person and still believe I can't build a successful business, or I cannot crack that interview at my dream company, or I can't manage my finances. That's where self efficacy comes in. Self efficacy is your belief that you're capable of successfully handling a particular task or a challenge. It's not simply, am I a good person? It's, do I believe I can do this? Can I make a big decision? Can I manage my money? Can I take care of myself? Can I feed myself healthy, nutritious food? I know a lot of people who are struggling with eating healthy. Can I learn a difficult skill? Am I capable of adulting? And here's the important part: self efficacy isn't built in the air, it's built through evidence. Let's say you start making money. At some point, you look at yourself and think, oh wow, I'm capable of taking care of myself financially. Or you start following an 80-20 approach of healthy eating. You're eating well, most of the time. You're taking care of your body. And gradually you develop evidence. I am capable of taking care of my health. Or you promise yourself, I'm going to wake up early in the morning and work out tomorrow. And then you actually do it. You have kept a promise to yourself. That gives your brain evidence. I am reliable. And this is where I think a lot of self improvement advice gets wrong. You can't simply repeat, I am disciplined in the mirror and expect your brain to believe you. Your identity becomes much stronger when your actions give you evidence to believe it. So, small promises kept become small wins, and it gives you evidence and creates a stronger self belief, which eventually results in bigger actions. Number four, self esteem. How do I value myself? Self esteem is different again. It is about how we evaluate and value ourselves. And I think this matters enormously in the way we allow other people to treat us. Sometimes we accept situations that are not healthy for us. We allow people to treat us unkindly. We stay in environments that make us feel small. Sometimes we even allow people to take advantage of us. And one reason this can happen is that we don't have a strong enough sense of our own worth. I have seen people in unhealthy relationships because they have low self esteem and believe that this is the best I can get. I have seen people in toxic jobs who stay because they don't believe that they're capable of upskilling themselves and going for more fulfilling or better jobs. But as you develop a clearer sense of who you are and you collect evidence that you are capable and worthy, you can develop a stronger sense of self worth. And when you develop a stronger sense of self worth, you're more likely to recognize when a situation or a relationship is fundamentally inconsistent with the way you believe you deserve to be treated. So you can think of these concepts like this: self concept, who am I? Self efficacy, can I do this? Self esteem, how do I value myself? And then we come to what I think is the most important question. Number five, identity development. Who am I becoming? This is the part that ties everything together because your identity isn't necessarily fixed. You are not required to remain the person you have been until now. You can deliberately develop your identity. And I think one of the most useful ways to think about this is action. So, action gives you evidence, and evidence, it creates a good self belief. And that belief, it forms your self identity. And self identity can lead to more actions. You don't have to wait until you feel completely disciplined. You don't have to wait until you suddenly become more confident. You don't have to wait until you magically become more motivated. Start keeping one small promise to yourself, then another. Eventually, your brain starts collecting evidence. I did it. Becomes I can do it, which becomes I'm someone who does this. And that identity can then become self reinforcing. I'll give you an example from my own life. Starting this YouTube channel has been a long held dream of mine. For a long time, I had a particular idea of myself. I thought of myself as someone who procrastinates, someone, who can be inconsistent, someone who start things but doesn't always follow through and finishes. And when you have that idea of yourself, every time you procrastinate, it becomes another piece of evidence that you're right. I knew what I needed to do. I know that certain things would help me create a better future for myself. But I would still spend days dilly dallying instead of working hard. But even after I started the channel, I wasn't posting regularly as I wanted to. I would give myself excuses, to get out of the hard work. And then I realized something. If I wanted to become someone who actually had a successful YouTube channel, I couldn't keep reinforcing the identity of someone who procrastinates and doesn't follow through. I needed to start creating evidence for a different identity. So every time I sit down and make a video, I'm not just creating a video, I'm creating evidence for myself, that a new version of myself exists now. Evidence that I can be disciplined, evidence that I can follow through, evidence that I can take something that matters to me and actually build it. And that changes the way I see myself. I am not waiting to feel like a disciplined person before acting. I am acting like, the person I want to become and allowing those actions to change my identity. And that's the fundamental idea I want you to take away from this video. You don't think your way into a completely different identity. You collect evidence for it. If you want to become someone who is disciplined, keep a promise to yourself. If you want to become more confident, do something that makes you uncomfortable. If you want to become financially responsible, learn to manage your own finances. If you want to become someone who takes care of our health, make one healthy choice a day. Because every action becomes a tiny piece of evidence. And over time, those pieces of evidence start changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a better identity. Motivation asks, how can I make myself to do this today? Identity asks, what does a person like me naturally do? And I think that's a much deeper question. But ultimately, the goal isn't to force yourself to become someone you're not. It's to consciously become someone that you want to be. And perhaps that's what the question, who am I, is really about. Not just who am I today, but who am I becoming?